Hello, good evening, and welcome to this Swedish twist on Burns Night. Joining me tonight, as always, is my co-presenter, Rich. Good evening, Rich.
Good evening, Mick. You well?
Very good, my friend. I was really getting into that intro music there as well before we come on. I was liking that.
Yeah, me too. And joining Mick and I tonight, if you don't recognise her from her social media channels and YouTube, you might remember her from coming to school us on how to pronounce our own whiskey. But Moa Nilsson, aka Swedish Whiskey Girl. So hello, Moa, and thanks for joining us to help with a Swedish twist for the night.
Hi everyone, it's great to be on again. Thanks for having me. And I mean, I was having a little dance to that music, but I really enjoyed it as well.
You're not the only one, Paul. You weren't the only one. So, guys, tonight we will tell you who Robert Burns is, and then we will step through our core range. Not too in depth, just a light dusting of our core range, and finish up with Svensk Rök Amerikansk Ek. We will accompany this with a book with the Burns poem addressed to a Haggis. As it was written, I'll do that bit. Rich will then translate it into English or anglicise it, and then the lovely Moa shall tell us it in what it is in Swedish. But first of all, Rich, who was Robert Burns?
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it. I've had Scottish blood coursing through my veins for my whole life, would you believe? But I've only ever been to, I think, like half a Robert Burns evening, really. So in the process of getting ready, I've had to learn quite a lot. I've made some notes, though, for what I won't be able to remember off the top of my head. But he was born 25th of January 1759, which is obviously why we celebrate Burns Night tonight. Known as Rabbi to his pals. He was also known as the Bard of Ayrshire and the Ploughman poet. I think he's widely regarded really as the national poet of Scotland. He's the most widely read Scottish poet and celebrated not only in his country but all around the world. I think anywhere where a Scotsman has been or moved to over the last sort of 200 years probably has some sort of celebration or at least reflection, I suppose, upon his works on the 25th. He was one of the leaders of Romanticism and had a major influence on that movement as well, which is sort of interesting to read and learn about. But so Romantic writers and poets sort of emphasised emotion, individualism, and sort of a glorification of all the past and nature. But so Burns' sort of various and I'll say ill-fated ventures, perhaps as a farmer, left him quite disillusioned with working on the land. So just before his 29th birthday, he decided to put his education to better use by seeking a steady, well-paid job as an exciseman. So an exciseman, someone employed by the government in what would today be HM Customs and Excise. To ensure that people paid their taxes as best as an exciseman could, particularly where related to alcohol. There's not a trade that was very admired by the common people. I think it's fair to say that excisemen at that time were, to say the least, unpopular. Attitudes towards them were, again, sort of fair to say, ambivalent. He only lived to the age of 37. The cause of his death remains uncertain. There's some clues out there as to sort of what may or may not have befallen him. He passed away July 1796 in the Scottish town of Dumfries. And I said it's fair to say that views towards excisemen and people like Robert Burns, while he was in that position, were sort of quite negative or ambivalent, perhaps. But I think it's equally fair to say that he remains an enormous cultural icon in Scotland to this day. In his works, I've left a lasting mark and a big, long, good legacy, I would say. A very interesting man. It's worth looking into him a bit more as well for anyone that wants to do a bit of Googling after the show, or if they don't know about him already, of course. But that's it. I think that's something of an intro, I guess. Mick, an acceptable amount of info there.
Fantastic, yeah. Rich. Absolutely fantastic. So that's obviously left us a little bit thirsty. Let's not bore these people too long. I don't mean that, obviously. So let's get drinking some whiskey, and we're going to attempt to recite some Burns poetry. So the first dram we have this evening, we're just going to start off with Mack. So pour yourselves your Mack, guys. We're not going to go too far into it. We'll cover a bit about Mac after this, but we need to pour one first to steady our nerves for some poetry. Like I said, I'm going to attempt it in the Burns tongue, or in the way it was written. Rich will then anglicise it, and then Moa will put a Swedish twist on it. So right. I'm a bit nervous about this. I'm not normally nervous, but I'm a bit nervous about this. Right, here we go. So, fair fight, your honest sonsy face, great chieftain of the pudding race. Aboon them a ye tak your place, pink tripe or them. Will are you worthy o a grace as langs my am. The groaning trencher, there you fill, your hurdles like a distant hill. Your pin would help to mend a mill in time of need. Well through your pores the dews distill like amber bead. Ooh, that was all right. So, Rich,
beautifully executed, Mick. Let's see how you do after a few drams when we get towards the last verses. It's either going to be better or not quite as good, perhaps. Let's see what happens. Right. I'll do the English one. No excuses from me. About form anyway. So, fair and full is your honest, jolly face, great chieftain of the sausage race. Above them all, you take your place, stomach, tripe, or intestines. Well, are you worthy of a grace as long as my arm? The groaning trencher, there you fill, your buttocks like a distant hill. Your pin would help to mend a mill in time of need, while through your pores the dews distill like amber bead.
Nice stretch, nice. All right, now for the really interesting part, Moa, your part.
Yeah, of course. Häll dig mitt liv och husorgan och hövding över korvars klan som svävar på ett högre plan än pölsans grova term. För dig höjs högljudda hurran så lång som min arm. Du fyller oss med ett lyckligt hopp, oss frossare från tå till topp. Hur ljus och runder i din kropp i fjällsträtts tunna plagg och pärlor lika bärnstensdropp betäcker dig som dagg.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
It just sounds so nice, doesn't it?
It could just be random words, guys.
Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't matter. But it just, the flow and the sound, that was beautiful. I think we all did all right there, guys. So, So let's treat ourselves to a dram. Obviously, we're talking about the Mac first off. So, as we know, guys, this is our entry-level whiskey. 40%. It is chill filtered. It is color corrected. But that's just so it can get to more places and look the same no matter where you are. Whether you're having it in a bar in Sweden, or you're in Glasgow, or you're down London way, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. That dram and that bottle is going to look the same. So for consistency and for aesthetics, that's why the chill filtration, basically. So Mac is an artisanal single malt made from only Swedish ingredients, as we already know. Mac is great in cocktails, but also on its own, straight, or over some ice, guys. There's Mac and wee Mac. That's Carl's wee kitten called Mac as well.
Two Mac.
It's a flavourful whiskey with bright, fresh character, notes of vanilla, pear, citrus. It's our entry level. It's designed to sit on the back bar. You can sit just over my shoulder. It stands out and it does its job. And it's a great starter for the evening. What do you guys reckon, Moa?
Well, mine unfortunately got lost in the mail, having had luck with that. But I mean, from memory, I think it's a great, just smooth, flavorful whiskey that I think a lot of people can like because it's easy to like, and it's not just something that you look past. It's actually really interesting, even though it is quite smooth and easy to enjoy.
Yeah, I think you're getting some good sweet flavors and stuff like that from the Virgin American oak that we use. There's no other casks involved in it, so you'll see a difference between our first dram and our last dram. They both use a similar sort of cask profile, which is just Virgin American oak. But obviously, on the very last one, we've put in our notched up slightly smoky flavor. So that should be good to end with. What do you think to the Mac, Rich?
I think I echo most of what Moa said, to be honest. And I think as referring to something as an entry level whiskey, I hope that doesn't sort of detract from it at all, from people's enjoyment. But really, it is what it is in our ranges. The one you buy sort of in the low to mid 30s. You can find it at, and I think at that sort of price, I think it stands up really, really well against other whiskies that are around it. A lot of flavour to it. The texture, I think it's got a good bit of texture. A lot of that will come from the casks that it's been in. You know, it's got more character to impart from them. You know, being virgin oak. I think all round it's a good one. I think it's something I like to drink. And I know, and interesting that you compared this, as rightly so, to the one that we have at the end, and they're just going to be like night and day to one another. But
same cask profile, but obviously different recipes, and just goes to show, you know, what that can do for you.
I think Moa, you selected the last dram for us, didn't you? If I'm not mistaken.
Sorry, say again.
Was it your influence? I think it was your influence. The final dram for the evening.
Well, it is one of my favorites, so I'm very glad it's on the lineup.
Okay. Yeah, nice.
So, guys, I've seen a few people say, a few familiar faces and a few new faces say hello tonight. Thank you very much. Good evening. I hope you enjoy some of the murdering of hot poetry this evening, apart from Moa, who sounds fantastic doing the her bit. No clue what she's saying. Well, I don't. Anyway, I know some people will do, but I don't. But it just sounds great. And so, just to recap, obviously, I'm doing the Burns in the Burn style. Richard's anglicising it. Moa's putting the Swedish twist on it. On the next part, guys, we're going to do a bit of that. There's going to be a bit of drama involved. But before that. Has anybody got any questions out there at all? Can you say happy birthday to Jake? Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, I was about to say before we go to any questions or anything, I think there's a birthday shout out there, Mick. Should I'll let you say?
You go for it. So okay, Jake Tito Reed, happy birthday, Slanja.
Slanja, cheers. How does one say happy birthday in Swedish, Moa? Perhaps you could say happy birthday to Jake in Swedish.
Of course, it's grattis på födelsedagen.
Okay, right. Well, many happy returns, Jake, and thanks everyone for joining. Anyone, as Mickey said, if anyone does have comments or questions or wants to offer us their critique on our poetry reciting skills,
Rich, don't open that door.
Please do.
Open that door, Rich. I've got a sensitive personality. I don't think I can take the criticism.
It's
well,
true. He is
out there that understand me. That'd be great.
We do normally have some Swedish people tune in, Noah, so you should be good.
Yeah, nice. I was only going to just tease you a little bit there, Mick, and say he is a sensitive guy. So anyone that does want to critique Mick, please be constructive or try and make it positive. Spin it as hard as you need to make it positive.
Not too hard though, guys. Do you know what I mean? I am a sensitive soul, bless me. Right, that was a good starter. I think we got a good flow going for the poetry there. So we'll move on to the next dram, shall we? Next in the lineup, guys, is Brooks. So Brooks Whiskey is next, and that's 41.4%. So pour yourself a Brooks. I just better grab mine, actually. Pour yourself a Brooks, guys, to dram along. No need to rush if you're still on the first one or whatever, but pour yourself a nice few Brooks.
This one has such a lovely bottle as well. I have mine here, almost empty, but it's such a stunning bottle design on that one.
So the design on the bottle is great, isn't it? It's like literally the story of Mackmyra. The very first bottle that came out, Noah, you'll probably know more than me and Rich about it. Used to have a skier on the bottle because obviously the founders met, or used to meet up, should I say, at a ski lodge every year for a reunion, and that had to get taken off. Because of the licensing laws in Sweden. So it's not there now. So when we got in trouble for it. So we put black stickers over the on the first batch. We had to put black stickers over the skier, and then subsequent bottlings after that we had to take the skier off. But no, on there you'll find the Brooks Distillery. You'll see the Gravity Distillery. You'll see a welding kit. You'll see the first 100-litre still that we produced our first liquid with, and lots of other stuff. And then obviously it's the first bottle in the range as well. That's got the 8 dimples on the bottom, and that represents the eight founders of Mackmyra. So yeah, it is a cool story, and it does tell it a lot. It's very busy going on. I spend hours just looking through that. It's really cool. So we've poured our next dram. I suppose we better dive in and get on with the next I'd get on with it. It sounds like I'm trying to rush through it. Do you know what I mean? So, guys, we're gonna do the next two verses addressed to a haggis, and this one seems me get my knife out and cut the haggis open and everything. So I'll wrap it before we do that. Oh, here we go.
Ooh, that's such a intriguing noise.
Yeah.
I had to keep it warm after it got good. Right, so guys, right. His knife see rustic labour date and cut you up with ready sight. Yeah, there we go. Trenching your gushing entrails bright like on a ditch. And all then what's the glorious sight, warm reeking wretch. Then horn for horn they stretch and strive. They'll tack the hindmost and they drive, till their wheel swell kites bent are bent like drums. The old guideman mast like to rave. Beth and Kip hums. There's a few difficult words in that one, Rich.
Yeah, there was.
Translation into English, sir.
Yeah, no, you did that really well, Matt. I was saying, I like the multitasking, Mick, as well. I think you handled that beautifully.
Thank you very much. Now I've got to sit here with this beautiful haggis just underneath my nose. So while you guys are reading, I might start eating.
Okay, so the anglicised version. His knife see rustic labour white, and cut you up with ready sleight, trenching your gushing entrails bright, like any ditch. And then, oh, what a glorious sight, warm, steaming, rich. Then spoon for spoon, the stretch and strive, devil take the hindmost, on they drive, till all their well-swollen bellies by and by are bent like drums. Then old head of the table, most like to burst, the grace hums.
Well done.
Nice stretch.
Yeah. I was pretending to cut a haggis as I did it. So just to get the feel and immerse myself in there.
That's the big theatre bit of a Burns night supper. Do you know what I mean? So the haggis gets piped in, yeah, and then the address to the haggis, you know, up there, and the reader of the poem that then cuts it open and stuff like that. You know, I've seen guys use swords, big cleavers, normal cooking knives, but I thought I'd use my wee ski and do. Så Moa, that brings us on to the Swedish version of that.
Ja. Av listenhet försatt i trans ger jag skalpellerna sin chans och skär med världslös nonchalans ett dike i ditt kött och ser ditt inres livsessens framvälla grått och rött. Med skeden gjord av horn jag tar och slevar lite här och var i graven där som kniven tar och till dess min buk står stinn. Tack Gud så finns av dig ej kvar mer än ett skrynkligt skinn.
That sounds fantastic, doesn't it? I think, like, looking back, you know, I enjoy watching programs like Vikings and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So you can imagine, like, in the big feasting hall and all that sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like a Viking version of like an address to a haggis. Do you know what I mean?
That's what we'll do next year.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Right, get that in the diary.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Done. What's closest to a haggis in Swedish cuisine? Is there anything akin to it?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, we have things like black pudding and things that people it might be something slightly old-fashioned to eat. I really enjoy it, but I know a lot of people are a little bit query about it, especially when you might know what's in it. But I do think there's a few different things. I'm trying to think if there's anything. I mean, up north, I think they're a lot better at actually taking care of a whole animal when they're cooking. So I'm sure there's specific things. But I mean, haggis was one of the highlights of discovering in Scotland. And it took 3 years before I actually dared to try it.
It is, you know, if you're not, I wouldn't say not massively adventurous with food, because some people might take that the wrong way, but if you think about it, you know, and it's mentioned in the poem and stuff like that as well, you know, entrails bright and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And that's, you know, one of your earliest forms. We've cleaned up a little bit over the years, etc. But that's essentially what it was. You know, a sheep's stomach filled with like oats and other bits of meats and stuff like that, wasn't it? You know, so it is quite descriptive in the poem, and I really quite like that, and the theatre of it, and you know, you open the haggis up and it was all coming out and stuff. It's fantastic. But yeah, I suppose it can be a little bit off-putting, to for want of a better word.
maybe.
But
I think
yeah.
Our modern disposition. Oh, sorry, Mark. Go on.
No, you go on.
Our modern disposition, perhaps it would be, but what you said, Mark, I think is really interesting about not wanting to, cut a tradition, not wanting to waste food, at any point that you could. I think that's true for Scotland, but it must be especially true for those living in Scandinavia over the last, sort of few thousand years, where you have to make as much food as you can for some of the harsher winter months, for example, get everything that you can. So it's good. I think it shows a bit of respect to the animal almost, that you're using everything. And before we started, we spoke a little bit about your experience with haggis, and you mentioned that you also quite like, the vegetarian haggis that you can get as well, sort of just full of like nutty and spices and things like that. And so there is an alternative on hand, I think, for people, a viable alternative. Yeah.
Or the crisps that I saw that someone was eating.
Yeah,
they're lovely.
She's enjoying haggis, snips, and tatties crisps.
Yeah, what brand is that? We're not the BBC. I think we can talk about that, because I'm sure that I've had haggis, snips, and tatties crisps.
Yeah,
Mackey's,
yeah, that's it. Nice.
Yeah, they come out with all the good funky flavors. The Mackey's. I think they did lawn sausage and brown sauce not that long ago as well. So a good staple. A good staple up here, where me and Moa are up in Scotland.
I actually got an order in from a relative. She was like, "I really miss those haggis crisps. Can you just send them in a parcel to me?" So they're actually sitting in a box back here.
Oh, brilliant! Oh, I like stuff like that. I do. So I've always been quite adventurous with my food. So things like haggis, black pudding. I grew up in the West Country and down there, especially in Plymouth. We've got a thing called a hog's pudding. Up here in Scotland, the closest thing to it is probably a white pudding. So I don't know if you've come across that yet, Moa?
I don't think so.
Yeah, white pudding is nice. I quite enjoy it, but hog's pudding is a little bit different. So I suppose haggis is like hog's pudding and black pudding sort of like mashed in together, really. So I've always quite enjoyed things like that. When I was in primary school, we actually went to a sausage factory. And a few people left there. I think they turned vegetarian after that visit. But no, I was home and I wanted a sausage sandwich for my dinner. So when it comes to things like offal and things like that, I'm quite up for trying it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's good that you can, and I think if you are going to eat meat, then why not eat haggis, because they actually take care of most of the animal, like Richard said earlier. And I mean, here in Scotland, if you're ever visiting, haggis is something you should try, even if it's the veggie version, because it's lovely. Or haggis bonbons, or I know there's a pizzeria here in Edinburgh that does black pudding and haggis pizza. So I mean, there's lots of versions of it, I guess now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. And when you put it onto, like you said about the haggis pizza and stuff like that, you know what I mean? When you modernise like old ingredients and things like that, and and use them, it does turn a new audience onto it as well. So then when you do have like burn suppers, you get younger people coming, because obviously we've seen the whiskey audience get younger, not just in bars stuff, but when we've done our tastings and things like that. Do you know what I mean? Apart from me, everybody is like under 35, under 30. Obviously, I tip the scale on the average on that one. So sorry about that.
I'm on the cusp. I'm on the cusp of leaving that bracket. Yeah.
If it helps, I'm quite childish, so that brings like my mental age down a little bit. So I fit in there somewhere, But no. So I think you're bringing in these foods that where before you see a big plate at Burns dinner and it's this big haggis on it and it's open and you look at that and go, no, I'm good. I'm okay. I don't think I'll try it. But like you said, with the crisps, so you're getting a flavour. I'm putting it on the pizza and things like that, and it's getting younger people eating it as well and go, oh, actually,
pizza's
not so bad.
On pizza, I think I've never had haggis on a pizza. I'd like to try. I mean, I definitely would try haggis on a pizza, but I don't know if I would try its constituent parts put on a pizza. I think that would be a step too far for me.
Yeah, that would probably be a bit on the extreme side, Rich. Yeah.
There's a line. I think there's a line for me.
One of my favourite, obviously, breakfast rolls in Glasgow are quite a big thing. And so one of my favourites is square sausage or lawn sausage, bacon, haggis pecora bully. Yes, definitely. Yeah. So square sausage, bacon, and haggis. You get it in rounds already made. That is up there. Bit of tomato sauce. I know over Melbourne side in Edinburgh that would be brown sauce, wouldn't it?
Probably, yeah. I think the best thing about haggis is they can pair it wonderfully well with a dram as well.
Yes. Yes.
I was about to ask Mick what your thoughts were, Mick, on pairing. You know, say the whiskies we have this evening. Granted, we haven't got to all of them yet, but which of these do you think that that you would pair with a haggis, as things are in your head right now? You know,
probably the next dram. So Svensk Ek. I would put it because it's got those spicy notes in it to go with the spicy notes of the haggis. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe the last one, Svensk Rök Amerikansk Ek. Mainly because I like saying that. It's also one of my favourite drams that we do. But also it's got a bit, you know, it's got that smoky flavour, that heavy smoky flavour coming through it. And I think that always works quite well with meats and stuff like that, you know.
Definitely.
So I think you can pretty much pair most food with any sort of dram you're in the mood for drinking, really. You can find things that is going to highlight the food or highlight the dram or contrast it if you're that way, you know, if you're that way inclined as well. So I think people are going to slate me for this probably, but I think you can pretty much pair any foods with any sort of drams you've got. I don't think you have to go out of your way necessarily go, oh, I need to buy a bottle of such and such to go with this particular meal. I think you can just make do with what you got and then find it in your own flavour profiles to make connections, basically. That's my 2 pence worth, anyway.
No, I think you're right. I think there's no wrong answers, basically. To you know, to put it succinctly, you know, have whatever you like with it. We said I'd actually choose the same two, maybe for what I would pair. So the Svensk Ek, as you said, that's you looking at with food. Complement or contrast, you know, when you're pairing anything that you sort of eat or consume, I guess. Svensk Ek would complement it for the exact reasons you said. Yeah. That sort of, you know, that warm spices that it has. And then either the Svensk Rök or it's, you know, the Amerikansk Ek, Moa, little nod, is that right? All right. But those that would contrast it. So it's still got some warm spices to it, you know, that are present, but that smoke being something different and adding something different to the mix, I think would work really well. Have you had much experience, Moa, with, or have you made many attempts with sort of pairing whiskies and foods on your channel?
Yeah, I tend to try a lot of pairings because I like inviting people that might not be your typical whiskey drinker. So I'm trying to find ways to be like, oh, if you're baking something, why not pair that cake or that cinnamon bun with a dram? And then I would say, because you both have 2 lovely whiskies to pair with your haggis, but I would also say the Brooks, because this is one of my favorites. So I have to say it. I have described this as the most estery whiskey I've ever tried. It's so fruity, so much pear. It's so lovely. I love it. Yeah. But it's this fruitiness that goes contrast with the spiciness, so it kind of binds everything together to a lovely kind of mix instead of having spice and spice, which can be lovely for some. But if you just want a little fruit and that spice, I think this is a great one for it.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, look, that's a perfect example. So if we look at the casks that went into make up Brooks whiskey to get that flavour and those estery profiles that you like so much. So we've got 200-litre first fill bourbon casks that have been matured for about 5 years. We've also got 100-litre Swedish oak casks from first fill, 100-litre sherry casks first fill as well, and we've got ex-bourbon casks as well, with a little bit of peat smoke in there as well, believe it or not. It's only very subtle. I don't get it personally. I need a bit of a bigger punch to the face for me to get the peat smoke stuff. So
Hamish has in the comments, Mick. So Hamish, you know, what's the differences in maturation, Mac and Brooks, a wee bit of smoke. Mickey mentioned the cast there. So the Mac, Hamish, is just that's all virgin American oak, whereas this one is all the cast that Mickey just reeled off there. It's a bit more of a complex recipe.
We've got 200-litre ex-bourbon, 100-litre Swedish oak. Do you know what I mean? We've got we've got sherry casks in there, you know, and a little bit of smoke that goes through it. So, like I was saying earlier, and like Moa brilliantly put as well, you know, you can have things that complement, but you're going to find bits in this dram that's going to go with quite a lot of things. You know, that's going to complement it because of those fruitiness, that little tiny touch of smoke. If you get it, I don't get it myself personally. I'm not as refined as some people, Richard. You see,
and I don't find that the smoke in this. I know that we have had some people that do fruits and spices for me rather than smoke. Gregory, we've got here said sweet, fruity, and dry, and I won't do all the O's in it, but he said it's good. He's emphasised the good though.
Oh, it's good. I like that.
Moa, do you detect the smoke? Because I'll get Mick to explain why the smoke in this is so subtle in a moment, perhaps about sort of smoke tails. But are you able to find any?
I feel on the finish there's a touch of something that just like makes it a touch more robust. It doesn't trickle off like smooth fruits. It goes smooth fruits, but then there's something that kind of grabs it at the end. So I do think you can kind of sense it. I wouldn't say it tastes like a lot of smoke, but I do think it's maybe you just know it's there, but it's just something.
Yeah. So the reason it's quite subtle is we do something called smoke tails. After we've done a peated run, a lot of distilleries would normally then scrub their stills and their systems right back. So when they do their non-peated run, again, there's no hint of smokiness in there at all. We don't do that. We actually then start putting our elegant recipe through, so our non-peated recipe through into the stills, and we'll put those casks somewhere separately to use for something like this, because you're not getting that full peated recipe through it. You're just getting like the feints basically of what was left from before. So it is like, smoke tails. It's just that wisp of smoke at the end of the process. So so we'll use them obviously in our brooks. There's a few others that we've used. So our new Swedish Rök, that's got some smoke tail casks in it as well. Just thought I'd drop in that bomb because obviously Swedish Rök was part of the lesson that Moa gave us last year. So just letting the teacher know that I'm keeping up with my studies.
Yeah, very proud, very proud.
Did he say it right?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah,
cool. I mean, come on, was there any doubt really?
I mean, he's had 3 months to practice it, so
there's no excuses there, Moa, really. There's really no excuse.
But what you said, Moa, about being able to detect it, quite often you'll see distilleries use, like a very small ppm, and that helps. It adds a bit of balance to something, which is the idea behind having, sort of our smoke tail casks that we mark lead to one side, as Mick said. Gives a bit of balance to something. It can add something that, if when Angela Draccio, our master blender, who makes all of our whiskies, she thinks it needs a little something like that, she can use something that's subtle to put in there. But also people put, use small amounts of peat in their distillation process to add a bit of texture, a bit of body to it as well. Because you mentioned then as well, at the end of this, you can feel something still there. And that could well have something to do with, the smoke tail presence, just that like hint of it within the whiskey gives it a bit more sort of body and things as well. So let us know in the comments, guys, before we sort of move on to the dram number 3 and the next series of verses from us. Let us know what you think. If you have any other questions as we go, or if you think you agree with the tasting notes we've had, or you've got your own, please comment away, and we'll address them as we go along.
Right, shall we move on to the next dram, guys? Svensk Ek. So probably our signature dram really at Mackmyra, because because of the amount of Swedish oak we've actually used in this. Now I'm going to say 10%, right? And that doesn't sound a lot, but if you take in consideration what Swedish oak actually does to the whiskey, as opposed to what American oak does to the whiskey, then you'll realise actually that 10% of the liquid that come from ex-bourbon casks, 10% of that liquid then went on for 18 months in virgin Swedish oak casks. And it really does bring something different. So pour yourselves a dram of Svensk Ek, guys.
I mean, I think it's interesting with Swedish oak, because I went to a tasting when I had it the first time with Angela here in Edinburgh, and asked her what's the difference, because of course Swedish oak is classed as a European oak, so you will find a lot of American oak, which often tastes a bit smoother and more kind of vanilla and tropical, but European oak tends to have a more spice, a little bit more tannin to it, and a little bit dried fruits. And I believe memory, Angela, the Swedish oak compared to other maybe French or Spanish oaks has a bit of a more kind of rough spice to it. Yeah. I don't know what you guys find, but I just remember that I thought that was really interesting, that even though European oak is often bunched together as a category, there's also subtle differences between Spanish, French, Hungarian, Swedish oak, even though they're all falling under European oak.
I mean, we'll talk about it after the poem. We'll go into the bit of the Swedish oak history and stuff like that as we go. But because there's such climate changes through Europe. Do you know what I mean? It's probably a little bit wrong to classify European oak over that sort of range. You know what I mean? I'm doing that and you can't really see my arms, but there's such a massive range going from like, the south of Spain where it's really quite warm. Do you know what I mean? Up to like, mid Sweden where, it's pretty chilly in the winter, like proper snow and everything, not like we whinge about here. You get like 6 inches and the country comes to a standstill. They've got like, proper good like 20-foot snow drifts and they're just cracking on with the day and stuff,
Even in France, there could be, you could tell us 7 different, oak forests in France in one country, and you can get differences in the trees there that it can be subtle. It can be a big difference here or there. There can be a number of sort of more nuanced and subtle differences, but it's all, the climate, as you said, the soil that it grows in, just wherever it is going to be influenced by its surroundings.
Swedish oak takes, about 150 to 200 years to grow before we cut those trees down. Do you know what I mean? In that climate, in that environment, that's quite a long time. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, but we'll talk a bit more about Swedish oak. Let's get the third part of the poem done out of the way, guys, shall we? So right, whew, are we sipping whiskey before we start on this one? A bit of the old Dutch courage, Rich. Right, here we go, guys. Part 3. Is there that o'er his French ragout, or olio that would stow a soul, or fricassee would make her spew with perfect sculler? Look down with sneering, scornful view on sick a dinner. Poor devil, see him over his trash, as feckless as a withered rash. His spindle shank a good whiplash, his neither knit. Through bloody flood or field to dash, oh how unfit. Whew. Right then, Rich, what's that in English?
Excuse me, just get warmed up. Is there that over his French ragout, or olio that would sicken a sow, or fricassee would make her vomit with perfect disgust? Looks down with sneering, scornful view on such a dinner. Poor devil, see him over his trash, as feeble as a withered rush, his thin legs a good whiplash, his fist a nut. Through bloody flood or field to dash, oh how unfit.
At least the "oh how unfit" bit seems to translate perfectly well, doesn't it? So Moa, what is that in Swedish?
Finns ännu i vårt land månntro personer som åt fransk ragout och dylikt hälsan anförtro, som utan tvekan se sin mages lugna arbetsro vid stöd av frikassé. Ack stackars arme koprofag, du tappar dina kroppsbehag med tärda franska anletsdrag och köttlöst klena ben. Du går omkring så blek och svag, ett blodlöst fenomen.
Again, fantastic. Honestly, this is when I had the idea for this to put the show together like this, I was a bit nervous to say the least. But I think we're pulling out the bag, guys. So thank you very much for supporting me on my ridiculous venture. I really appreciate it.
Mate, it was a brilliant idea, and Mo was delivering it so well. It actually, it's such a difficult language to master. Mick and I had, a small taste of that when you were teaching us how to, pronounce our own drams. But as challenging as it is for us to say something, it sounds poetic when you read this poetry.
I mean, I must give some credit to the person who's actually translated this, because I did not do this. It's a guy called Hasse Alfredsson, who's a Swedish singer, actor, poet. So I am very, very grateful that he translated it, because he did it brilliantly.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. No, it's made me happy, obviously, that it's been done. Do you know what I mean? But also, I'm a bit disappointed, pal. I thought that was all you.
Oh, I shouldn't have said anything.
Yeah, we could just let you have the credit.
Yourself under the bus.
What makes me quite happy is that the Swedish Scottish Society, they do this every year, and they have their own kind of reading of it, and they do it in Swedish and Scots. So I was just happy to see that the Swedish kind of group of people here, they mix the Swedish and the Scottish, which I think is lovely, being from Sweden, because you don't want to lose your own culture. And sometimes you feel like you don't get an opportunity to practice your own cultural things. So it's nice when you get a twist of the mix of the both.
No, I mean, and it is, you know, like you said, it is lovely to do as well, and it sounds beautiful. So whoever did do the translation for you, you've done a very good job, and you're delivering it very well for us. So you're probably pulling me and Rich out of a hole, quite frankly. If it was left to us pair to do it, I don't know what this show would have looked like.
I will just say, and not unkindly, it sounds as though you're doing a very good job, but it's because we don't know. It sounds like you're doing a perfect job, but we can't say.
Just gibberish. I'm just pretending.
So
I'm following it on the notes that we've got, and it sounds like you're doing it right. So I'm good with that.
Brilliant. I think the last verse is the best because you can kind of get some English words in there. So wait for that one.
Yeah, which will be next on our fourth drum. So Swedish oak, Svensk Ek, which exactly that, it means Swedish oak. So way back in 1830, just after the Napoleonic Wars, the Swedish Crown sent out a delegation to search for the ideal spots to plant oak trees for future warship production. 3 of those emissaries came upon a small croft on Visingsö. Was that correct?
Yes, very much so.
Yes, that's because it's quite difficult because it doesn't spell as it's pronounced, which really throws me and Rich through a hoop sometimes. So Visingsö is a narrow island in the middle of Lake Vättern. And that's Sweden's second largest lake. Here they came across 3 fantastically looking oaks just outside an old woman's farmhouse. They took one of these trees back to Stockholm, and the royal family and the Swedish Royal Navy went, that's the place. That's the exact sort of wood we want. That's the place to do it. And so what they did over 10 years, they planted 300,000 trees. Now, that's a lot of trees.
That's dedication.
that is proper putting all into it, isn't it, really? But, you know, like we mentioned before, the climate in Sweden is a bit colder in the winter than it is in the UK, and a bit warmer in the summer. Yet the lake's surface water is always quite cold, and the weather being quite dry most of the year, with the summer being fairly wet. This makes the trees grow quite slowly because, like we said earlier, 150 to 200 years before we actually fell the trees to make it into furniture and all that sort of good stuff, which we'll cover in a bit. So you could say that the Navy and the Swedish royal family were thinking awfully far ahead in their planning stage. But they were planning things to keep them afloat well into the 20th century. But by the time obviously the trees were ready, those initial trees were ready, they showed obviously there was no interest in the wood for warships, because we had a small thing happen called the Industrial Revolution. So where most things were then made of iron and steel and all that sort of good stuff, and something a bit more robust. But back in the 1800s, to make the oak suitable for ship production, other species such as ash, beech, elm, maple, and silver fir were planted in between the oak casks to force the trees to grow up and straight. So now that gives us 900 acres of really tall, really, really straight trees. So even, we don't use them, or, the Swedish don't use them for warship or boat building now. They're found other purposes, so think of things like flooring, furniture, and of course, the most important thing for us, whiskey casks. You can make staves out. We make staves out of them. So what does that mean for us at Mackmyra? Well, it means we have access to plenty of oak to make casks for a start. And we last week we had on the fantastic David Anderson from our Cooper, and that was a great show. He was a great guy, really nice guy. And he obviously then makes them into our Swedish oak casks for us. So what does that do to the New Spirit? We started talking about this before we got back into the poetry. So Swedish oak has less wood sugars than American oak. So that means less of the sweet notes. Like Mo was saying, it's a bit more peppery, less fruity, really. So the notes associated with American oak are like your toffees and things like that, vanillas. So where this, more black pepper, cardamom, nutmeg, there's a bit of a toffee-like sweetness about it with some like almondy type notes. So the unique attributes of Swedish oak and American oak combined have become a bit of a thing that we do, especially in our anniversary casks. So in our anniversary casks, it can buy for a single cask program. The staves are made from ex-bourbon, and the cask ends are heavily toasted and indented, scored basically Swedish oak. So that combination with our new make spirit is great. And like I said, 10% of the liquid in the bottle, it was finished in virgin Swedish oak for about 18 months, and nothing short of 18 months, which gives some different qualities that you don't get from American oak, really. I personally, I really quite enjoy it. It does give that. This is where we come into our own. We've got a few whiskies on the market. Mo, I know you've got quite the Mackmyra collection and drinking selection yourself. But there's whiskies that we've done which you can go, oh, I can see where they're going there. That's quite similar to Scotch, but I think Svensk is very much you can taste. It's definitely a whiskey without question of a doubt. But then you go, there's something slightly different there that I can't quite put my finger on, and that's because people haven't tried. Or majority of people, should I say, haven't tried, whiskey matured in Swedish oak, and those peppery notes that you get, I get them really on the finish. Yeah, there we go, Sean, brilliant. Definitely has a pepper spice kick, and that's the Swedish oak influence right there, guys. You know what I mean? Because before it went into the Swedish oak, it was an ex-bourbon. We all know what ex-bourbon does for new mixed spirit throughout whiskey land. That's the most commonly used casks. But that influence of Swedish oak is phenomenal. What's your take on it, Rich?
Well, I think we were talking earlier about that compare contrast. Rhys, I mentioned that for when pairing food and things. That's another thing Angela's got to think about, being the equivalent of a chef, I guess, in the kitchen, coming up with a dish, thinking about what whiskey to bring out and what cask to use and mix together to release as a single malt. Ex-bourbon, I think you touched on it there. We're all familiar with what influence ex-bourbon cask give, being the most sort of prevalent out there now. But this having a bit of Swedish oak mixed in gives it that that contrast of the sweetness, the part of the spices and things. And we've had all these comments coming in now. Starting back with Dennis. Sort of rich and spicy palate. Lingering apricots on the finish, and a hint of loquacious. Have I got that right, Mick? That's not sweet. I'm just being silly there. Sean, I'm sure we just saw some comments pop up then that I didn't read as I was speaking there. But from Sean, definitely a spicy sort of pepper kick, and then the others that have come up along the way as well. But everyone tends to agree with this. There's no wrong answers when you're tasting or nosing a whiskey. Whatever you think you find, if you can put a word to it or a name to it, it exists there. But I think that generally speaking, everybody gets that spice. Whether or not you can name what spice it is, people sense that spice that's in there.
Definitely.
And then come to speak with it.
I akin it to like white pepper. That's because I quite like copious amounts of white pepper on my roast dinner.
I feel like black pepper. I was nodding then, but I was thinking pepper for me, black pepper for me with this. White pepper from the green tea. The Grunter tea, our green tea influenced whiskey. Moa, so this is we were the first people to make casks for whiskey out of Swedish oak. But have you had much experience with anyone else doing it, or is this the only one that you know?
I tried some samples from an upcoming distillery that is very interesting, and they use some Swedish oak. But I have mostly come across it in Mackmyra, which is interesting. And I've seen the comments that people are mentioning ginger and chili, and it's interesting how you can kind of separate the pepperiness, the ginger, the chili being like hot spices instead of the cinnamon and nutmeg that might be a little bit smoother. Yeah, and
the sweeter spices.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I'm getting thirsty just listening to these tasting notes. I have to get myself a Svensk Ek. And I also saw that it's someone else's birthday. Ian Tider, I think.
Yes.
Grattis på födelsedagen.
We have a Jake double-barreled Tider earlier. So is this another part of the clan, another part of the crew? Could you wish Ian a Swedish happy birthday again, Moa?
Absolutely. I hope he's having a lovely birthday. Grattis på födelsedagen, Ian. And skål.
Skål.
Yeah. Fantastic. So, Mo, you do a lot of private tastings yourself as Swedish whiskey girl. for people, you know, wanting to explore whiskey and stuff like that. Have you used Svensk yet in any tastings?
I haven't. I'm used Brooks whiskey. I think a lot of people are quite interested in the differences between international whiskies. So I think Mackmyra is a great one to showcase because it is the oldest, of course. 21 years this year, is it?
21.
Yeah.
December the 18th last year was 21.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a good example, I think. And I've started doing some little one-on-one masterclasses for people that might know a little bit about whiskey, but might not feel comfortable in a group. So you just sit down face-to-face and then you chat a bit about the whiskies. And I think these are always an interesting talk point. It seems to catch people's attention and interest.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, we've definitely seen, you know, over the past sort of like 6 months, really. You know, we've been doing these shows since March, or in one form or another. But I think definitely the last 4 to 6 months, we've seen an increase really of interest from people, which is fantastic for us. You know, it makes mine and Rich's job as brand ambassadors a lot easier to have a captive audience. Do you know what I mean? That want to be here, not just like, oh, I've been made to come to this. What's he going on about now? Does Sweden even make whiskey? I mean, you know, surely it should be whiskey with an E, you know, and all those sort of comments. But no, we've seen a big increase in that, and it's fantastic for us, you know, and having people like yourself, Moa, to come on that support the brand as well. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously, natural Swedish, now living in Scotland, in the heart of Scotch, really, you know, over in Edinburgh, with that thriving scene coming through and all those great whiskey bars and stuff like that, it's easy to forget about international whiskey. Do you know what I mean? So I think it does take a lot, really, to, you know, an Englishman selling Swedish whiskey in Scotland is, you know, it's quite a job challenge, really. But no, it's great, and it's really nice to speak to people, and they're so receptive to it and that as well, you know, which definitely makes our life a lot easier, Rich.
Oh yeah, totally. And this is so I've seen these comments coming here. So Lisa, they're just confirming Ian is Jake's grandfather. Birthdays 3 days apart. Which is fantastic.
Fantastic, guys. Fantastic.
Yeah. And we've had another request for a birthday shout out coming from Garth saying so excellent session, whiskey. Thank you very much for those nice words. Please can we do a shout out for our bearded friend Colin Geit? If I'm pronouncing that correctly. Participating today to celebrate being 70 years young. So yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you both for being there. Happy birthday to Colin. Moa,
over to Moa for the Swedish birthday.
I'll do the other version this time. Ha den äran, Colin.
Perfect. Brilliant.
And I think it's lovely to see whiskey bringing people together. As you can tell, you have friends joining in with us. You have the grandfather and the grandson, and it's lovely to see.
I mean, that's great, isn't it? I mean, you know, in years gone by, you know, it just been granddad in the pub having a wee half and half and all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? But now, you know, we go to all these bars and that, especially in Scotland, and you're seeing, you know, the younger people getting into it, and the knowledge of bar staff as well is certainly improving, you know, especially in your whiskey focused bars. You know, your run of the mill, what we call in the old man's pub. I hate that saying, but it's easy to explain. You know what I mean? You go in and, you know, the only guy in there that's drinking whiskey has got like a blend that's like 100 years old, not the actual whiskey itself, obviously, but, you know, a brand that's been there for years and years, and he's sat there and he's got his jug of water, and he probably puts as much water into his half as he does the whiskey. In his wee pint of best and all that type of stuff, you know. And
I'm just waiting for the grandmas soon.
Yeah.
There's a lot of grandfathers and grandsons, and I just want to see some more grandmas drinking whiskey. I know there's a lot out there. I just want to see them.
Well, we have quite half. I would go so far as to say sort of half the people we have commenting, and I know that I've seen a name or two already this evening. Are women, are girls, women, whatever you would describe yourself as. So I think most of the guests we have on, I think, half of the guests we have on again probably recently, Mick, especially the last sort of 6 months or so. It's been women that we've had on, people like yourself, Mo. It's the second time we've had come back. So as far as Mick and I are concerned, you know, there's plenty out there, but more and more it'd be great to have. The only thing is, the more people that start drinking whiskey, the more expensive it's going to become. So maybe we should discourage people. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to balance that fine line, don't we?
There's-
Enough people interested in it, so all these great distilleries around the world stay open and producing.
Yeah.
But not so many that our prices of our drams go through the roof. Like, you know.
Let's work out that formula, because the distillery that Mick and I and Carl in the background pulling the strings for us this evening, who just to digress very quickly, did get a shout out earlier from Carl Lucas, a friend of Mackmyra. So it wasn't anyone that doesn't know, because I don't think we mentioned Carl at the beginning. I think we skipped past him, I'm afraid. We've got Carl in the background, is a fellow ambassador of ours. It does helps with all of our tech stuff when he's not on screen. We've got a shout out from another Carl who looked like he might have just been giving himself a shout out, but we do have a colleague called Carl. But at the end of that digression, so the distillery Mick and I talk about most often after Mackmyra on the shows that we do, is featured on your clock behind you, or the island at least is featured there. And yes, yeah. So I've been thinking recently we need to stop talking about them as much, because I don't want that to become more and more expensive for me to buy. So yeah, maybe we just sort of manage things there. We'll work out a formula and we'll come back.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah.
It's
oh, sorry, Mo.
No, I was just going to say it's nice. I mean, I really miss drinking whiskey with people, but even just seeing these things, and I know I have a familiar whiskey friend who just tuned in with his thoughts on Mackmyra, which I think he tried for the first time last year. And yeah, it's just lovely to get to chat to people about whiskey. And there he is, yeah.
Okay.
If I remember rightly from the last year we did know, Fjordmark was one of your favourites.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Right, guys, I think
on that America link. Yeah, I was going to say in that comment there, as I mentioned about you wish it was easier to get over in America. That's I wouldn't hold your breath just yet, but it's something that's certainly being worked on, I would say. So yeah, so hold in there for a little while. But Mick, I think you might have been about to move us on to the rook.
Yes, I think we should move on to dram number 4 and the last part of our poem, and then we can get to some whiskey chat after that again, guys. Okay, so dram number 4, Svensk Rök. So Svensk Rök is Swedish Smoke, basically. I mentioned earlier, and we'll talk about our smoking process and ppm levels and stuff like that at the other end of the poem. So we'll do that. We'll get that bit done and out of the way, and then we can.
You keep saying get that bit done and out of the way. You're doing such a good job, mate. You're doing fine. You're doing well. There's nothing to get out of the way. It's Burns night. We're here to do the poems.
Mate, I'm just glad we're in lockdown. Do you know what I mean? Because, like, obviously living in Scotland, living in Glasgow, you know what I mean? I don't have to go out on the street tomorrow and get lynched by lots of angry Scottish people for murdering their poetry. I just wait for my inbox to explode or something, like, you know? As soon as lockdown's over, plumber, you're going to get it.
You're doing fine. You're doing a grand job.
Thanks, guys. Right, so Svensk Rök, guys, and on to the final 2 verses of Address to the Haggis. But mark the rustic haggis fed, the trembling earth resounds his tread. Clap in his wally, neither blade, he'll make it whistle. And legs in arms, and heads will sned like taps of thistle. Your powers what make mankind your care, and distant root their bill of fare. Old Scotland whence they spinking where, that Japs in luggies. But if you wish her grateful prayer, gear a haggis.
I love that ending.
It's lovely, isn't it? It is lovely.
Right, so the anglicised. But mark the rustic, haggis fed, the trembling earth resounds his tread. Clap in his ample fist a blade, he'll make it. Wait, have I gone back a thing there?
No, you're right. I'm actually
right. Yeah.
I was so thrown by the blade. I'm so sorry, everyone at home that was thinking that we were doing such a good job, and I've just told Mickey how well he was doing, and
just dramatic pause.
I got so thrown by the blade thing and thinking about that camera. Should we go from the top? Can I reset? Okay.
Reset,
right.
Reset.
Thank you. But mark the rustic, haggis fed, the trembling earth resounds his tread. Clap in his ample fist a blade, he'll make it whistle. And legs and arms and heads will cut off like the heads of thistles. You powers who make your mankind your care, and dish them out to the bill of fare. Old Scotland wants no watery stuff that splashes in small wooden dishes. But if you wish her grateful prayer, give her a haggis.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, Rex. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Right. And to put the romantic non-English twist on it, Moa.
Men haggisätaren går till kamp, så marken dånar av hans tramp, och sattes i hans hand en pamp, då huvudena brotts. Av kämpens hugg till marken damp, som vissa tistelskott. Fransk mat kan passa utländsk brett. Vad bryr sig Skottland om kotlett? En skotte klarar av så lätt, allt motigt som en baggis. Om blott han får sig äta mätt, på mustigt öl och haggis.
Guys, I think we all need a round of applause there. That was fantastic.
Yeah. I think so bringing it back on point. That was beautiful. Well done. Yeah.
We made it to the end of Address to a Haggis, guys. Well done on all of that. That was fantastic. Like I said at the beginning, I was a little bit nervous entering into this, but I think we did all right. Even with Richard's little blip there, I think we still pulled it through, my man. So you're okay. You didn't let the team down.
Almost flawless is just about flawless, isn't it?
Oh, we can't be completely flawless. Thank you very much, Carl. That's exactly what my ego needs at the moment.
Oh,
thank you very much, Tamara. No, don't, let's not get too thirsty for the attention there, guys. But anyway, so, Svensk Rök, Swedish Smoke. Smoky, peaty whiskies, always a good one to start finish up. This is not our last dram. I think we still have one dram to go as well, by the way. So just to give you a little bit of info on Swedish Smoke, Rich, do you want to do that?
Yeah, well, yeah. So Svensk Rök, Moa would have you say, not Svensk Rock, as I think Micky and I said for the first, I don't know how many months. But Svensk Rök, so Swedish Smoke. We are one of fewer than I think 10 distilleries in the world that actually malt and peat their own barley on site themselves. So when we started in 1999 or started producing then, one of the sort of key things that our founders wanted us to do was keep it Swedish, basically. So one of the key parts of that is ingredients and where they come from. So all of our ingredients are Swedish, all of our barley, yeast, water, obviously, and even the peat that we use as well. But the problem was, so we knew we wanted to make a peated, variant, have a peated whiskey, as well as an unpeated. But nobody in Sweden then, and I'm not sure there's even anyone now, actually peated barley. So Viking maltings, sort of southwest Sweden, not too far from Gothenburg. They produce, or they malt our barley for us for our unpeated runs. But they didn't have any peating facility. So the first time that we ever did it, we had to send the barley to them. They malted it for us, and we shipped it back to, went down. I think the founders actually went into the facility and were just shoveling, green malt into wheelbarrows to bring back out. So it's quite a laborious affair. So you couldn't really keep that up for too long. So we started to malt and peat our own stuff, or we always had to peat it ourselves. So we brought that green malt back, put it into a small sort of almost dog kennel-esque duck house sort of shape shed to
smoker, yeah.
Something that we made, a little smoker ourselves that was first, like that's it on the left there, at first located in one of the founders' gardens before having to move to another founder's garden because neighbours have been complaining. This is its second location here. And the tub you saw in the first photo, that was our sort of original malting floor. So the barley we put in there, it'd be malting, sort of turned over, keep it warm and moist, get it germinating. Now we all do it in a small facility next to our Gravity distillery, which very quickly, 35-metre tall distillery. Barley goes to the top. Each floor on the way down is the next stage in the production process. So we're sort of utilising gravity from one floor to the next. One of the other key principles of ours was sort of sustainability from a very, from the outset, actually. So this was sort of like an objective we always had to get in. But just to the side of this distillery, we have our malting room that has been built and a big sort of 35-foot shipping container off the side of it that we've converted and modified into becoming our now sort of smoking house. So all of our founders, the engineers, and if you're an engineer, if it doesn't matter what it looks like, if it does the job,
as long as it
and
works.
it gives you your product, that's what matters. So we've got this big shipping container. So if you go to Mackmyra, when you're able to get over, sort of safely and legally, sensibly, whatever it may be. You can have a look at this and you just see, all this lovely setting where it is, about an hour north of Stockholm. And then this big sort of shipping container where all the smoking is done. But I think that adds to some of the charm, if you ask me. So anyway, so that's where our barley goes in. The ppm that we go to is quite high. That won't translate. I think looking at some of the comments here, or if we can have some in, let us know what you think about sort of the smoke in this. But we go up to 65 ppm, there or thereabouts. But that doesn't come into this whiskey because we're effectively making a concentrate to go into a mash bill. So instead of putting 100% of the barley that goes through a peated whiskey run through the process, we take 25%, 23% actually is peated barley. So that's got the smoke flavour infused into that barley, and the remaining percentage will be our unpeated barley. So what you get that comes out at the other end is this, which is indisputably a smoky whiskey. It's a peaty smoky whiskey, but it's not one of those big peat bombs, 65 ppm that's in there. So we do that, and the reason we do that and the reason we use those proportions is because, as I said, we do it all ourselves on site, and we don't have probably the land and the area really to sort of scale up to that, and at the same time we sort of don't need to. So we've just designed to be on the money for what we really want. And Angela had a huge influence in sort of preparing that and saying what she wanted to have for to be able to then work with at the other side. This is Angela D'Orazio here, our master blender, who every distillery and producer has someone that doesn't mean it's blended whiskey, it's all single malt because it comes from a single distillery, but a master blender's role is to design and create whatever release is coming out, or to maintain the consistency of a core range product, something that gets done in batches year after year. It needs to be the same as the last.
So Rich, but she does act as our master blender, but what's her actual proper title?
Yes, yeah. Her proper title is just gone straight out of my head because
Chief Nosing Officer, isn't it?
Chief Nosing Officer.
Thank you, Moa. You can take my job anytime you want. Someone probably.
I mean, I think she's an incredible woman if anyone's looking for someone who's very creative with their whiskey. And when we went to visit the distillery, we got a private tour from her. We're really lucky. And what I really liked is that she explained a lot of processes in the distillery that you could do it in a different way and get a higher yield, or you can make it more efficient. But because she wants a different flavor profile and she puts the flavor first, it's a kind of a way of putting quality over quantity. Instead of having the most effective yeast, you use another type of yeast that will give you specific flavors. And I think might be the same for the peat and all the process with the wood as well, which is just fascinating for a distillery.
Well, but she's lovely as well. But yeah, chief nose officer, and the second woman ever into the Whiskey Magazine Hall of Fame as well, which is quite a big accolade. And what you said, that flavour first, that's her, her MO. That's what she tries to do. I think that she might have been a bit ahead of the game for in some ways, in that respect at least, because there's a lot of people now in Scotland looking at some of the bigger producers perhaps will look at what you said. They'll look at yields because if they can make a product that people still like and enjoy, it doesn't sort of hurt or harm anyone, and if they can make the most of it that they can with as much as possible, all good for business. But lots of people now looking and experimenting with all sorts of different types of barley and yeast, and the quantities that you mix them all together. And I think she was certainly not the first person to be doing that, but definitely doing it before the craze began, I would say.
Well, I mean, like Noah said, the different yeast that we use a yeast called cognac, which is like it's a slower acting like brewer's yeast. So our fermentation time is like 5 to 6 days. So which is phenomenally long. It's probably twice the industry average. What I mean? If you're looking at the majority of distilleries just around the world as well, not just in Scotch, they go for about 72 hours ish, give or take, depending. Yeah. But we're like double that.
I think it's interesting if you are Swedish and you see what yeast they use, because it's a baker's yeast from Kronjäst, isn't it?
Sorry, baker's yeast. No, you're right. No, you're absolutely correct.
you see these massive things, and the things that you get, because we get fresh yeast mostly in Sweden, so you can just go into any supermarket. It's harder to find here, I find, but it's like these little cubes of fresh yeast. But if you go to the distillery, it's like that, but just scaled up.
Blocks,
you definitely recognize them if you are a Swedish person. It's just lovely to see that there's actually Swedish products going into it.
Yeah. Well, you know, even our peat, most people associate peat with like the Highlands of Scotland and Ireland, stuff like that. But no, you know, peat occurs in the majority of the world.
Yeah, I think someone was asking about that as well.
Sorry, Mo, what was that?
Yeah, I think someone was asking about the peat.
Yeah, where does it come from, Mick? And
okay, cool.
and
so
do we dig it ourselves?
There's a place called the Karen Bog or the Karen Mossen, which is just about 50 kilometers, give or take, from the distillery itself. So yeah, do we dig it ourselves? That's a good question. Yes, we do. We only take the top layers, though. We only take the top layers. We don't dig right deep. What would you call it, Rich? The white layer, isn't it? You
white peat. Yeah, I mean it's not white in colour, but it's referred to as white peat. So like the most sort of immature peat there, really. So it's more sort of more smoky properties rather than those sort of like medicinal things or notes that you might expect, or that some people might expect from peat.
So Andrew Bullingham there would like to taste our new make. Andrew, if you go into Mackmyra.co.uk, you can actually buy a product called Vittund. It's 46.1%, but it's our new make basically. Well, there's no basically about it. That's exactly what it is. It's our new make at 46.1%. It's not peated though. We don't have a peated new make bottled.
Not bottled. No.
That's something we can have at our next sales meeting, Rich. We'll have a wee talk about that.
Moa, before we address this comment down here, could you just translate what Vittund is into Swedish?
So Vittund means white dog. Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. It's good. Vittund means white dog. And it's, of course, all over the world, you get people calling new make white dog, or in Scots, cleric. So it's just different phrases for it.
Yeah.
That's it. And then that comment, I think we've got another shout out to give Mick.
Another
feel like a proper radio station or like, like a regular TV show.
I said at the beginning, we're not BBC stuff. You know, we can talk about other things here and there, but it's starting to feel more and more like we might be. But I'll let you take that one away, Mick.
So Kim, happy birthday! You get suitably sourced with these wonderful drums. Fantastic. You can join us and choosing to spend your birthday with us. And Moa, happy birthday in Swedish, please.
Ha den äran.
Lovely.
Fantastic.
Cheers. Happy birthday.
Guys, keep these comments coming in. It's absolutely fantastic. So like Rich was saying, you know, we peaked 60, 65 ppm, but not all of that translates into the mash bill, for want of a better word. So we have a 1,500 kilogram mash bill for a batch, and when we do a peated run, 350 kilograms of that 1,500 kilograms is our 60 ppm, 65 ppm malted barley, and the rest of it's our elegant or non-peated barley from Viking. So that's why 60, 65 ppm doesn't translate into this final whiskey. You know, if you look at the more famous peaty whiskies from Islay, your Ardbegs, your Islay, your Lagavulins, etc., they tend to peak to about 45, 50 ppm on average. You can roughly take after that's pre-distillation. A wee geeky fact: you can take about 2/3 of that away for the post-distillation ppm on average. Doesn't work for everybody just because of their distillation techniques, etc. But that's a rough guide.
Like I say, distillation techniques. It depends what what they've got, how much copper contact there is. You ferment, and however long the process takes from start to finish, as well as the amount of sort of interaction that spirit's going to have with its surroundings as well, will influence that ppm level. Sean said down there, peat comes from bogs. Bang on, peat bogs. I'm talking about the translation of Mackmyra. You sort of made me think. It's something I always like to.
Let's give it. We've said it loads. Let's give this to Moa to translate for us.
Yeah, let's see if it's the same as what we've said, because it tickles me the translation that I've been given. So Moa, how would you translate Mackmyra?
How would I translate Mackmyra?
Could we say perhaps then what we've been told, and you can tell us how
Yes,
or wrong
please do.
we are? Yeah. So we were told, so Mackmyra, separate the two words, or separate it in two. So Mack meaning like a sort of small, flying, nibbly, annoying insect, such as a midge or mosquito, and then Myra meaning sort of wetlands like bog or swamp. So what we've been comically led to believe is that it translates into roughly at least into midge bog.
Mid swamp.
Yeah, midge bog, midge swamp. Is there truth in that? We've told a lot of people this.
Yes, I mean the first one I've never heard. If someone asked me what mac means, I would say it's a slang word for a gas station.
Okay.
And then myra is ant, so gas station ant. But I think this might be based on older words. I haven't heard mac, so I don't know if it's what's it called, like an accent or a dialectual thing, perhaps. But I do know myra is or like there's different way of saying it. I think where I'm from, slightly north, you would say a myr or myra. So it's slightly different. But I can see it. I'm sure it's right.
So Mackmyra, is it old language? So Mackmyra is a place. So I dare say that it was named in Old Swedish after its midgy, boggy surroundings, perhaps. So Brooks Distillery and Brooks Whisky, that's got a lot of old uses that I think that we lean into it a little bit more. So sort of like industrial, like a good thing of a favourite thing of something, lots of older versions for it. Whereas now Brooks means something a little bit different. So perhaps that's just evolved over the time.
I mean, we can just ask the audience, what translation do you prefer? Do you prefer that midge is flying around an house bog, or do you prefer gas station ants? You can choose.
So when we mean bog, we mean like a mire, a swamp. Do you know what I mean? So like Mackmyra would be midgy swamp, essentially. Not quite the outhouse before indoor plumbing.
It sounds like somewhere Shrek would live.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. 100% agree. 100% agree.
A Scottish expat living over in Sweden as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we just swap places.
Yeah. Right, Mick. What have we got before we move on to the next dram? What have we got for those watching now? What have we got the next sort of shows coming up? When are we?
So Friday we're back with the Mackmyra Inn, which we're going to happen every Friday now. We welcomed Mackmyra Inn back Friday just gone with our good friend Jess Lomas from Single Cast Nation. We have on Friday a friend of yours, Rich.
Yeah, Andy Duckworth of Malt Box. You can find his whiskey reviews on YouTube. You can find him on Twitter at Maltbox. Founder of the Manchester Whiskey Club and quite a prolific whiskey reviewer as well. Just a really nice, funny guy. So the Mackmyra Inn is just me and Mickey have a guest, and we talk about whiskey and whatever pops into our head. And
just whatever, right? It's a much more relaxed flow, and we just drink and have a laugh for an hour on a Friday afternoon to unwind from a busy week, basically. So less
poetry.
Yeah, a lot less. Well, I don't know. It depends on how the mood takes us, Rich. We've been quite poetic recently, haven't we? Do you know what I mean?
I'm building some confidence with it. I know it got a bit shaky at the end, but I'm certainly building some. So perhaps we should sort of insert some poetry into the Mackmyra Inn.
Maybe we should have a poetry corner at Mackmyra Inn.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Why not? Other pubs have got karaoke and pub quizzes and all that type of stuff. Maybe we should introduce poetry corner to Mackmyra Inn.
Let's do it. Let's talk about it.
We've got the perfect one to start off with as well. This thing's Sunset.
Yes, yeah, we do. I won't be able to remember that off the top of my head now, though, so we'll have to save that for the...
Definitely not for now. We've had enough poetry for this evening, I believe. Very well done. Or the less it was, you know what I mean?
Let's introduce dram number 5, Mick.
I think we definitely should. So, guys, for the last dram of this evening in your tasting packs, one of my favourites that we do, and Novo said earlier it's one of her favourites as well, and that's the Svensk Rök Amerikansk Ek. So, break it down to the translation: Swedish Smoke, American Oak, and it's a bit of a Ronseal moment. It does exactly what it says on the tin. So this is our This is our peated our peated recipe. Turned up a couple of percent, and just aged in virgin American oak. So very much like Mac at the beginning. No other casks have been used for this. It's just been virgin American oak casks, which, if you look at it in an industry whole, it's quite unusual. But you know, that's what we do at Mackmyra. Really, you know, we do forge the way in a lot of things because we're not shackled, essentially, like some other whiskey industry people are. So this is definitely, yeah, Dexter, been waiting for this. You're not wrong, my friend. You're not wrong. Before I even got into Mackmyra, working for Mackmyra, obviously me and Rich were both big fans. That's what, you know, when jobs did become available in Mackmyra, me and Rich jumped at them because we were big fans for 3 or 4 years, a couple of years. But beforehand, any road, you know, we liked the journey. We really enjoyed the story, and more importantly, we loved the liquid. And a couple of years ago, when this was first released, it was released as a limited edition. Then it became really popular. So now we do it every year. So it is still limited, really. It's done in batches, and yeah, it's fantastic. So we go back to our standard ABV, which is 46.1. Most of the things you try from Mackmyra are 46.1, and it's just a beautiful dram, quite frankly. So, you know, while we're enjoying this dram, we're going to have a discussion of why we're here at Mira, and why we at Mackmyra are doing a Burns night tasting. You know, so just to take it back, in the beginning, like we mentioned earlier, the 8 founders visited Scottish distilleries. So when they came up with the idea in 1998, they went all in for it, basically, and did a wee tour of Scotland. And you see the picture there, you know, that's at the gates of Cragganmore. And they visited a few other distilleries as well to gain as much knowledge as they could, so they could, you know, adhere to one of our things, which is respecting the tradition while exploring the future.
Yeah, that's it. So Cragganmore, Glen Turret, and Lefroy were the 3 that they went to, and it wasn't just sort of, you know, standard, you know, £10 distillery tour. It was like, please can we meet? And, you know, we're thinking about starting up a distillery in Sweden. We're the first people in the country to ever do it. Could you, you know, give us some time and a patch? So everyone from those 3 distilleries were incredibly generous with their time and help. I think you actually find everyone that works in whiskey that isn't, and no aspersions on you know, the people I'm about to comment on now, but the people running the big business side of it, things, a bit of healthy competition between them, but everyone else at the sort of production level and, you know, people, you know, at sort of mine and Micky's level, they just want to chat and discuss best practice and learn from one another. So everyone was really helpful to the decisions when they came over. And so, you know, Scotland produced a product that's sort of so well known and appreciated around the world, so widely spread. But our founders didn't just, you know, they toured some Scottish distilleries and got lots of help from them, but they didn't just want to be another distillery, like another Scottish distillery that was just in another country, you know. So they use a lot of different techniques and wanted to be, or keep it Swedish as much as possible. I'm not sure we've actually mentioned one of the key ingredients in the peating process mix. We'll have to circle back round to that.
Oh, we did. Well, yeah, we'll recap on that in a moment.
Moved over it, yeah. So that's actually quite key and fits into what I was saying there. You know, so we produce a single malt whiskey. It's produced, you know, the same. The fundamentals are the same as, you know, whiskey produced in Scotland, but with, you know, a Swedish twist. You know, and people all around the world are trying to, you know, well, not necessarily emulate Scotch, sorry, but, you know, taking that as a baseline, a baseline jump off point. You know, these guys have been, for want of a better phrase, you know, smashing it for centuries. They're doing so well. Who else would you sort of look to for example? You know, and if it wasn't for Scotland and Scotch, you know, I don't know where, you know, world whiskey really would be. Mo, I don't know what your sort of thoughts or take on world whiskies, because you've probably got quite a unique perspective, somebody who's been, you know, sort of born and raised in a country that's now producing whiskey, but then moved to the should we say, and I'm sorry for any Irish people with us tonight, you know, the original, no, I'm not saying that they are, but, you know, viewed as such perhaps around the world. You know, I don't know what your take would be on world whiskey and Scotch.
I love world whiskey. I think world whiskey, new world whiskey, is a category that I'm really, really fascinated by. And seeing Scandinavia and the Nordic countries do their own thing is really fascinating. And I think what's so lovely is also that it makes me think, like, it makes me feel a bit more patriotic. I'm so proud of what Sweden's making because I think it's lovely. And like you said, I think Sweden and a lot of other countries look to Scotland to find inspiration because, I mean, they've been doing it for hundreds of years. So you'd be maybe a little bit silly not to do your research, and then you'd find that what the Scots have maybe discovered, the minimum aging time, what grains you can use, and so on, to learn about that and then find your direction. So even though it might be that you've learned from someone else who's done it for a really long time, you then find I often say that the more you learn, the more questions you have. So then these new world countries can take those questions and be like, well, what if we do this? Because they can, something you wouldn't be able to do in Scotland. But in Sweden, Andrew can go, do you know what? I want to put green tea in an Oloroso season cask, or just mix it all together and see what happens. And it's just something very Swedish. And like I'm sure you will talk about now, the smoke for the Svensk Rök Amerikansk Ek is also based on an old Swedish tradition, of course. So things like that is just inspiring and makes me feel proud to be Scandinavian. And it's always fun to see. And I saw that Andrew was hinting at maybe there's a new release coming soon. And I think Carl answered him. But I'm also super curious about the seasonal releases because they're always something curious.
Yeah, I like what you said, Mo, about inspiration. You know, countries around the world look to Scotland and sort of draw inspiration from it. So I think the vast majority out there, at least everyone who I've seen, is that no one's copying it, or at least I haven't seen too much of that. But drawing inspiration from it, I think is I don't know, it's important to draw inspiration from. So see something and not necessarily improve upon it, but try and make your own stamp on it. Try and do it in your own individual way. I mentioned about, we left out when I was talking about the Svensk Rök, a sort of a key part. It's not just us making sure that all the barley and the peat comes from Sweden for us to be Swedish. I think that's almost like an arguable minimum standard, really. But there is a twist that we do, Mick, where we could be inspired by the Scottish peating process, but then put our own spin upon it. So what do we do differently?
So the flavour of the smoke in Svensk Rök, and in this case Svensk Rök Amerikansk Ek, is inspired by the old tradition of seasoning and preserving food by infusing it with juniper smoke. So we age our smoky recipe exclusively in new casks of American oak for this. But what we do is our peat fire. We get our peat fire from our local Karamossen. We get that going, and then we put a layer of juniper twigs, dried juniper twigs on top. We source them from the local power company, actually. So when the local power company is going out and carrying out maintenance of their power lines and all that sort of good stuff, they're trimming away juniper bushes, etc. We use the juniper over in our gin, but we also use the juniper branches as a smoking source. So that more oily resinous that would give effect to the smoke, basically. And like Noah said, the Scandinavians have been infusing smoke for preservation for foods, etc. for many a year. So, and it's great. And it does put that certain twist on it. Do you know what I mean? You don't get that medicinal peat hit that you're going to get from an Islay whiskey. You don't quite get that floral note you're going to get from Highland peat. There's definitely something different. You can definitely tell without a question about that it's a smoky whiskey. And it's just something different. What's Bully said? American has a longer sweet finish than Svensk Rök. So that's to do. So we use slightly more of our peated malt in this recipe, and also we just use virgin American oak. So freedom and whiskey gang together. You're not wrong there. You're not wrong there. That's another Robert Burns poem.
Oh, I remember that time. So American oak cask being used with it. Just those rich, sweet notes, like vanillas and caramels and sort of and chocolates with that smoke. I love, and I know Mick, you do too. But sweet and smoky, whiskies,
Oh,
just about across the board. Because that's another thing going back, sort of, full circle to where we were earlier about complement or contrast when you're putting something together. And I think that sweet and smoky for me in a whiskey just does the same thing. It does both at the same time. It contrasts it to such a degree that to me it becomes, complementary of one another, and I can't get enough of it. I really can't. That is another interesting. I think we saw it might be in the comments. I can't find back now, but someone mentioned about would we have an extra smoky release and things. So this could be considered as our extra smoky version that we have out now. Reason being, Mick and I mentioned earlier about the ratio of peated barley, smoky barley that we put through with unpeated barley into the smoky whiskey runs that we do. We actually do a heavy rook, we call it, heavy smoke, where that ratio is effectively doubled, so closer to 50% of the mash bill. Mash bill meaning the grains that are together at the start of the process. So it's doubled in smoke. Some of the casks that have been used in this particular one happen to be casks of the extra smoky recipe. So it's not exclusively put together with extra smoke, but it does have some extra smoky casks in the mix. And so you might be able to get a bit more sort of smoke from it. If you can, that's why.
Seeing some lovely comments coming in, guys, and this is available to buy. If you go to mackmyra.co.uk, and Svensk Rök Amerikansk Ek is available to buy on the website, guys.
I saw that Stephen Valentino already has a bottle to enjoy.
Yeah, which is fantastic.
Good. Yeah, cheers.
It's a good one to enjoy, particularly now in the winter, I would say.
Oh yeah. Oh,
so this is one of your favourites, isn't it, Mo? I'm not mistaken in saying that. I think this is one of them.
It's actually quite funny. The first time I met Angela was at a tasting. It was like my second week at work when I actually started working in the whiskey industry, and because I went up to speak to her and she saw that I was Swedish, at the end of the night she was like, I just have half a bottle that I can't do anything with. Do you want it? And I got a bottle of Svensk Rök Amerikansk Ek. So to me, it's always going to be special. And I mean, it's a lovely whiskey. So thank you, Angela.
I mean, that's a great story of why it's a favourite as well. And I think, linking back to Burns being like the leader of romanticism poetry and the romanticism movement, and what we do now as well, we try and relate stories back to drams and stuff like that. And that's a perfect example right there of why this whiskey holds a special place in your heart. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's fantastic. And that's one thing that probably drew me and kept me in whiskey, and why I wanted to work in whiskey myself as well. Was behind every dram there is a good story. And sometimes you have to make that story up. But that's okay. As long as you're with friends and you're enjoying a good dram, then it's not a problem, is it, really? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what it's all. And that's probably one of the biggest things I'm missing at the moment, is to be in pubs that we frequent. I wouldn't say quite a bit, because that would maybe cast aspersion upon our good characters, Noah. Do you know what I mean? But there's some lovely whiskey bars in Edinburgh. We've got some fantastic ones for in Glasgow and that as well. It's just being in there and talking to the staff, and I first met Moa a few years ago when she was working for the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society, and I was a member, and seeing her happy face as I walked through the door of the vaults, so it's things like that, you know what I mean, and you do recognise people, and you get to have a jam with people, and you come up with stories, and it's exactly, Bully, why let the two stand in the way of a good dick?
But just keep dramming until you get a good story.
Basically, yeah. There's always going to be a good story going to come out of it, whether it's because of what you did while you were jamming or the after effects, But it's great, you know what I mean? But no, things like that, Noah, is probably why, people do take their time to enjoy a whiskey. Do you know what I mean? And get into the nuances of a whiskey, because somebody that you looked up to and you first met gave you a bottle at the end of the day. Said, look, I don't have to do this, but here, would you like this? Like, yes, please. Thank you very kindly.
Through those experiences, you build an emotional connection to something. It's not just about. I don't think anybody. I seriously doubt anyone. Even joining tonight, drinks whiskey because they just sort of want to drink. It's a thing to enjoy, and especially a thing to like share and you can learn about it if you're excited to learn about it, but you don't have to learn about any of it to enjoy it. But drinking or sort of doing tastings, like Mick said, with people and just being in the same room, I'm sure you miss, being at the vaults, Moa, as well. But just being able to enjoy it with people. So Mick and I, it tend to be just the two of us with Carl in the background. Shout out to Carl, doing these shows these days. But having a guest on is excellent, and it's so good for us because it makes our job easier. We don't have to talk as much. It probably makes it more interesting for the people watching as well. But then we get to interact with someone. But I say having the comment section available to us and having comments pop up and being able to see them all as they come in. Everyone that has commented, and not everybody can or can reach a keyboard, but everyone that has, thank you so much for doing it, because it's about as close as we can get on this side of things to being able to interact.
For that interaction.
We delivered a few monologues tonight, which wouldn't probably happen in person. It becomes more of a conversation. But when you're hearing sort of delivering stuff in this way, you have to now and then to get a message across or to talk about something. But having everyone comment, it's been brilliant. And the amount of people, I don't know, January seems a busy month for birthdays. I think it's the first time we've done birthday shout-outs, and we've had 4 in the night. We should make this a thing. Maybe that would encourage people again to comment in the future. But let us know. So we had a comment from Sean saying that he thinks that this is the best dram of the evening in his opinion. And it is all, your opinion counts. If you think it's the best, it means it's the best. No matter what other people
Nice.
Let us know what and Gregory agreeing with Sean. Let us know anyone that can reach the keyboard. Let us know what your favourites were, whether or not you put them in order for us or you just tell us what your favourite is. Always keen to know. Mo, of these 5 this evening, what would you put as your favourite? And I appreciate it could be different, the next time we talk to you, but for tonight, what do you think it is?
Well, I mean, I've had the Bruks and the Svensk Rök Amerikansk Ek, which is probably my 2 favorites out of this lineup, as far as I know. I need to revisit the others soon. But I wanted to say Svensk Rök Amerikansk Ek because I'm always keen a little bit of peat. But the Bruks always surprises me. And I think I just got a little bit of a sweet, fruity treat. And I'm making my dinner haggis after this. So I think I'll have to go with the Bruks today.
Okay.
Well, I believe you're doing haggis bonbons. Well, but you're going to put a Swedish twist on it by having it with a lingonberry jam or something like that. Yeah,
IKEA's finest lingonberry jam.
I'll take that. That sounds like a really good combination
to me.
Sounds beautiful combination. I've got my haggis just cooking next door. My partner's in there. It's probably in the oven. It's probably not far off actually being plated up.
And Micky has it on the table already.
Exactly. So I had a large lunch. So I'm going to turn my haggis into some haggis and cheese toasties.
Oh, nice.
That sounds very good. It sounds it sounds adventurous. I mean, it's not very adventurous, but it's unique. Unique.
Well, something we were talking about earlier, just putting that modern twist on an old food source. So, but my wee son used to go to a climbing club over on the south side of Glasgow, and they used to have. In their cafe was amazing. And they used to have haggis nachos.
That sounds lovely.
That was phenomenal, by the way. But we don't have any guacamole in the house today or any sour cream. So we're not doing that. So we thought, well, what else can we do? Not massively hungry. Do you know what? We'll turn that haggis and we'll do some haggis and cheese toasties.
Wow.
Sounds lovely.
That does sound lovely. And haggis nachos. Sounds like you blown my mind in a minor way, but that sounds
honestly, mate. Honestly, they were the business.
Sounds it certainly does. We probably start slowly winding things down, Mick. Yes. Not just because I've mentioned my haggis and I've started being hungry. It probably is just that sort of,
no, I think we're all ready for a bit of dinner now, Richard.
That sort of time of night, I think. But yeah, just say thank you to Moa. Really.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great fun. Honestly, just seeing another faces, just staying stuck in my flat at the moment, so like everyone else. So just sipping some drams, having some good chat, and then seeing everyone dram along with us out there as well in the world.
Yeah, it's been lovely. It's been lovely. So, guys, as we just alluded to, that's all we've got time for this evening. Many thanks for joining us. It's been absolutely fantastic, and thank you for putting up with our Swedish twist on Burns night. You can join me and Rich on Friday when we're back at the Mackmyra Inn and we resume our roles as landlords. and we chat to Andy Duckworth of Maltbox and of yes, his mum and dad were called Jack and Vera. No, I'm joking. But we'll rib them about that on Friday.
So Rich, shout out. We've got on the 10th as well, Mick. We've got our Valentine's
Day special, yeah.
Yeah, on the 10th of February anyway, so it's another week or two away. We've got that coming up where we're going to have the Prestige, one of our moment range. So we've got core range, the four that you've all received in the box tonight are as Mackmyra's core range whiskies, and the Svensk Rök Amerikansk Ek it came out as a limited edition, as Mick said, but it was so popular, and it seems very popular in the comments as well. But it proved so popular that it's going to be introduced as as a regular appearance. But then we've got a seasonal range in the middle, comes out twice a year, has some sort of reflection upon the season in which it's come out, and then the moment range, which is where that Prestige fits in. So made with casks that previously held. It's champagne casks. You don't put champagne in a whiskey, obviously, but the wine, the precursor to a champagne. So made with grapes, a Grand Cru and Premier. Or Premier sort of regions. Philippe Ponat, which is one of the probably one of the better champagne producers out there.
Very much.
But a quick look at the comments, Mick. It looks at Svensk Rök Amerikansk Ek. I know I got the Ek more or less right there. Seems to be getting a lot of love actually there. Gregory's put them in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 going back. So starting back.
Happy days.
It's good, nice and simple, that one. Maybe he was just trying to do it as quickly as possible before we went. As well.
Was that an old Dusty Bin? Remember Ted Rogers, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? Dusty Bin? No, you two are too young for that, aren't you?
We're in that 22 to 35 category you talked about, Mick, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why we don't get it. Yeah.
So, guys,
thanks to everyone who's commenting now as well to say, and there's some thanks coming in there and stuff. And Mick and I and Moa as well. We enjoy doing this as well, but it makes it so much better, as I said a moment ago, when we do have this level of interaction. It really does. So, I'd say that's probably enough for me, Mick. I'll let you and Moa say goodbye and hear what Moa's got coming up, perhaps, for our channel.
Yeah. So guys, to sum it up, today Mackmyra produces whiskey with the same joy of discovery and experimentation as we did when starting back in 1999, but in one of the world's most modern distilleries, with the Glaswegian distillery. We do it according to the rules of the art, but we do it in our way with our Swedish ingredients. So Moa, do you have any parting thoughts or shout outs, my friend?
Well, I've really enjoyed this, so thanks for having me on again. I currently sitting here planning lots of fun things for my YouTube and my Instagram. So if anyone's curious about that, there's some whiskey games. There's just released some ASMR for whiskey enthusiasts, so maybe check that out. But there's a lot of things coming up because I have a lot of time to do it. So feel free to come along and please drop me a message if there's any questions about any whiskey. I love chatting whiskey and I'm bored. Please talk to me.
Fantastic, guys. So you can find Moa on...
Oh, sorry, Mick, I think we're about to say the same thing.
You can find Moa on Instagram, on YouTube, under Swedish Whiskey Girl. Some absolutely fantastic content, and you'll always learn something. It's great. And so that's us for the evening. Slanja.
Yeah. Oh, cheers.
And skål.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.